Step out here for a few minutes while we take up the matter.
Ladies and gentlemen, no stop, leave the chair following.
Please do not discuss anything about the case. All right, let's take them one at a time. Who is next?
Judge, the next witness would be Michael Mouret. He owns Nashville Coin and Currency. He was there on April 10th when Mr. Reinking came in to order the 10 silver bars that he paid $2,000 for that were in his backpack when he was located by Kyle Williams of the Metro Nashville Police Department. He interacted with him. He will describe that interaction, that Mr. Reinking was very calm. He was able to communicate with him. He understood everything he was doing. Mr. Reinking had an out-of-state check, and so he ordered the silver bars and then had to come back to pick them up. So on April 20th, Mr. Reinking showed up to pick up the silver bars, and they had another interaction. And again, Mr. Reinking was perfectly calm, able to communicate with him, very calm and understanding, none of the delusions that were going on. That's the purpose of the rebuttal. Now, it also relates to other factors in the case, but the purpose of it are these are people that interacted with Mr. Reinking close in time to the April 22nd event.
But you're not going to be allowed to use his testimony to argue premeditation.
Okay.
Because that should have come up in the case in chief. I will allow it for the limited purposes of establishing circumstances surrounding his mental state at or near the time of the event. And I will give a curative instruction to the jury in that regard. Because I agree with the defense. This bit about him buying silver and all those type of things, it is to be argued as part of the plan. Set the committing his crimes and then getting away, that goes to premeditation, and I sustain your objection as to that extent. I will allow it for the limited purpose of this his mental state in terms of delusions and that type of thing. Who else do you have?
The other two witnesses are two DCSO corporals. They worked in the jail. Mr. Reinking was found with a styrofoam food container that inmates are given. He drew a drawing of the Waffle House shooting where he drew a Waffle House and stick figure people that were dead and drew himself shooting at the victims almost a year later in April of 2019. And he did that on 2 consecutive days.
What does that rebut? What does that rebut? And again, if they want to get into his mental state at the time he drew the drawings, we can get into competency. So that doesn't rebut anything.
What is it rebutting?
Judge, it rebuts whether or not he did this as a command from God. He's drawing it on almost the year anniversary, celebrating what he did. That absolutely is rebuttal proof.
Do you have the drawing? Was there any comments made about it?
There are no comments made about it. We drew on the food package containers and they were collected by DCSO, reported to our office, and seized by Detective Summerall.
There's also a probative and prejudicial effect argument that goes with it, but it doesn't rebut anything at this point.
It also doesn't say anything about premeditation.
Judge, the doctors testified that Mr. Reinking did this because he felt that he was compelled to. The state submits that these drawings show that he did this because he enjoyed it and he wanted to.
No.
Judge, I don't want to be. Those are exactly. Look at those two things. They're in evidence. They've read all that in. There's a spaceship on top of one of them, and the other one with the little caption on it is exactly what got read in through the experts about someone in there saying, making a statement. You know, him hearing a statement while he was outside the Waffle House.
Which is why it's relevant to the state's argument, because he's enjoying it, he's reliving it a year later.
That is case in chief. She's talking about premeditation again.
It is not premeditation.
If she'll let me finish, she's talking about premeditation again. She is saying this shows that he intended to do it and enjoyed it. That's what she's saying it shows. It doesn't, those food trays are testimony that's already come in through the statements. His state of mind a year later or whenever it was is not relevant. And the only reason she's trying to make it relevant is because of premeditation. It does not go to anything we have put in play. Nothing.
Judge, it absolutely goes to whether or not Mr. Reinking appreciated the wrongfulness of his conduct. It absolutely goes to that. We've had doctors get up there and testify that he made excuse after excuse after excuse for what he did. A year later, he is drawing about it, trying to celebrate it. That goes to wrongfulness.
So that's the point. Where's the proof of celebration? Is there somebody that's going to say, yeah, he was laughing and saying how proud he was of himself or something like that? No. It's two food trays that are consistent with everything that the doctors have said he said.
Except for it doesn't have anything in there about God.
It has aliens on it.
Yeah,
Spaceships.
that's that spaceship,
Makes
which
it
is
more
part of
relevant.
it. Which again is not in, there's no, that not in contention.
God is the issue.
Well-
One of the focal points of this whole case.
But I'm sorry, Judge.
And there's nothing on there to suggest that a year later was that was a part of his thought process. I mean, he all those styrofoam lunch trays, or whatever you want to call them, he clearly shows shooting the two people outside. He clearly has the statement being made, that very offensive statement. He remembers people yelling, "Run for your lives." And it just shows him shooting upon them. It doesn't suggest that there's any influence whatsoever coming into play. You know, I mean, if he's got these people saying this, you know, why doesn't he have something coming down saying, "You've got to kill one more," or something suggesting that he was under the influence of someone else's. I mean, I think it's a jury question, is my point. And I think it goes to his mental state as to whether or not he can appreciate the wrongfulness of his conduct.
Yes, sir.
So I will allow those two.
And just noting our objection, thank you. So now back to this issue about playing this video.
No, I'm not gonna do that.
Okay.
And the reason I'm not gonna allow that is because, and I know that the law allows, this thing about the attorney, bringing up the fact that he invoked his right to an attorney, but I think we've gotten that point close enough.
And just for the record, Your Honor, the state was introducing it to show his actual behavior during that interaction, how he said it, his demeanor, that he was calm during this entire process, which that has been proof that we've put in, and this just corroborates it. And we were prohibited from putting this in our case in chief.
I don't remember being brought up in case in chief, but
And it wasn't brought up in case. It wasn't brought up in case in chief. They brought it up with Dr. Wood. And no, we have never disputed his calm demeanor. I think we've heard experts for 2 days say,
yeah.
calm,
I mean, the
calm.
whole time, I haven't heard anything from anybody that he was anything but calm after his arrest. So let's get the silver man and the two trays. And is there anybody else?
No, Your Honor.
All right, you can sit down.
Thanks.
There's been nothing to refute his demeanor throughout that whole period of time after his application. Is the next witness out there?
Yes, Your Honor.
Get the jury right here.
Yes, sir.
What is the gentleman's name?
Michael Murray, Your Honor.
Oh, Mouret, that's it.
Got one in the restroom, Judge. One's in the restroom, and the rest of them are lined up.
When we're finished with the testimony, I'll, need to see the attorneys up here. Or at least the representative of the side, and then y'all can, what I have to see, talk to you about, y'all can talk about tonight.
You ready, Judge?
Be seated, please. Call your next witness.
The state's next witness is Michael Murray.
That's it.
You want to leave? You solemnly swear or affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God? Yes, it is. I make it with good understanding.
Mr. Murray, could you please state your full name for the record?
Yeah, Michael Lawrence Mouret Sr.
And can you spell your last name, please?
Sure, it's Mouret.
And you said it's Mouret, correct?
Correct.
I pronounced it wrong and I apologize.
That's quite all right.
Mr. Mouret, what type of business do you own?
I own and operate Nashville Coin and Currency. We buy and sell rare coins, precious metals, collectibles, things of that nature.
And your business, was it located on Chadwick Court in Brentwood, Tennessee in April of 2018?
Yeah, Chadwick Drive, that's correct.
And at some point, did you come into contact with Mr. Travis Reinking?
I did.
And can you describe that first time that you came into contact with him? Do you remember when that was?
Yes, ma'am. That was on the 10th of April. He came into the office. The office is set up for the public area. There's 2 desks where we had 2 secretaries. Each secretary had a client at their desk, so Mr. Reinking had to wait, and he waited patiently, kind of off to the side till it was what desk freed up. Then he approached the desk when it was his turn, and we did his transaction, answered his questions.
And what was it that Mr. Reinking was there to purchase?
He said he wanted to buy 100 ounces of silver.
And how much does 100 ounces of silver cost?
At that time, it was approximately $1,700.
And I guess, was there any discussion about what form of silver he would be purchasing?
The standard discussion people will ask questions is what size is it available in, the premium above the world market price, is it above for different sizes? So the cheapest way to buy it is a 100-ounce bar of silver, which is about a 7-pound brick. The next size down that's very popular is 10-ounce size bars. And then you could also pay more and get little 1-ounce size pieces for convenience.
And do you recall what size he ended up purchasing?
Yes, he wanted 10 of the 10-ounce size bars.
Okay. And how did he pay for that?
He wrote us a check on a bank out of Colorado.
And so was he given the silver and allowed to leave that day?
No, we asked him to come back next week. We said we'd get it for him and let the check clear. So approximately a week later, we called for him to let him know his order was ready to pick up.
Okay, and so you contacted him by telephone, is that correct?
That's correct. We tried a couple of times. The voicemail was full, or we didn't get contact with him directly. I think he ended up calling us back a day or two later.
Okay. And that first interaction that you had with him on April 10th, during that entire sales process, was he able to follow your conversation and answer all your questions and make decisions about what type of silver to purchase?
Well, it wasn't very complicated or long. I think he kind of had an idea what he wanted, so that we had a discussion. I typically probably showed a couple of different options. He chose that. We explained about the waiting a week to let the check clear and finished the paperwork, and he was done. So,
Okay, and was there anything unusual about that interaction?
no, he was very polite, kind of shy. Nothing unusual stood out.
And you said that you contacted him by phone and he returned to come and pick up the silver.
Yes, we called him about a week later, and I think it was 2 to 3 days later he called us back.
And do you remember what day it was that he showed back up?
It was on the 20th of April, so 10 days later.
And can you describe the office on that date?
Yeah, the office was quieter, so he came right up to the desk. He said, "I'm here to pick up an order of silver." He says, "Do I need my driver's license?" And I said, "No, Travis, I recognize you. No problem. Let me just get it." And I went to the back and get it, and delivered it. He looked at it. He signed off the receipt. They picked it up, and it was done.
Had you required his driver's license on the first date of purchase?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so when he returned, he actually asked you, do I need to go get my driver's license?
Right, and at the time it didn't strike me as odd. I assumed he had left it in the car, but he never said, "I don't have my license." He just asked, "Do I need my license?" And I said, "No, I recognize you, so it's fine."
Okay. And that conversation, was there anything unusual about that?
Not to my knowledge.
Okay, if I can have just one moment. I don't have any other questions.
No question.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mouret. Next witness. All right, next witness.
Say we call Corporal Jacob Bianchi. Raise your hand each one, please.
You solemnly swear or affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes.
That's the way to stand on step one.
Good afternoon. Can you please state your name and spell your name for the record?
Jacob Bianchi, as Jacobbianchi.
Where do you work?
Davidson County Sheriff's Office.
How long have you worked there?
It'll be 5 years this February, so this month.
All right. In what division are you working now?
Currently, I work in the training division as an instructor.
Where were you working in April of 2019?
I was a corporal assigned to the Maximum Correctional Complex.
All right. And in that complex, can you describe the layout?
Yes, in the complex there's 8 pods. Each pod has 32 cells in it, and each of them are laid out in 2 different buildings, 4 pods per building.
All right. And in each one of those pods, are there a number of cells?
There's 14 cells on the lower tier and 18 cells on the upper tier.
And are those essentially single rooms?
Yes, sir.
One person per room?
Yes.
All right. Can you describe the door to those rooms?
The door has a single window, about 1 foot by 1 foot, and there's a pie flap that's used for food distribution and collection.
Called pie flap? Is that
Pie
right?
flap, yes.
Do those individuals that are staying there, do they have access to pen, paper, writing instruments, that kind of thing?
Yes, sir.
During April of 2019, were you familiar with Mr. Reinking?
Yes.
And how were you familiar with him?
When I was assigned to the unit, I would be interacting with him periodically throughout the day, usually for any medical procedures or appointments that he had, food distribution, collection, recreation time.
How often in a given month would you be assigned to his unit where you would be interacting with him?
Maybe 5 to 10 times a month, depending on how the schedule worked out.
All right. How limited were your interactions with Mr. Reinking?
Most of the time, they were pretty limited. He was a quiet guy, so very minimal conversation with him.
All right. On April 1st, 2019, were you assigned to his pod?
I believe so, yes.
Did you have interactions with him on that day?
Yes.
Were some of those interactions both giving him food through the pie slot,
Pie flap.
pie flap, through the pie flap, and then retrieving the trash at the end of the feeding time?
Yes.
Okay. I'm going to pass you an item and ask if you can identify this. Sir, if you can take that out of the plastic. Do you recognize this item?
Yes.
What is it?
This is a styrofoam tray that we serve food into the inmates.
Okay, and this particular styrofoam tray, who did you get that from?
Mr. Reinking.
Okay, and was that what you collected at the end of his dinner feeding?
Yes.
All right. Judge, if we could have that marked as the next exhibit, Exhibit 74. And Judge? Yeah, hold on a second, Judge. I'm going to ask, once that's marked, I'm going to ask it to be published the old-fashioned way where it's actually passed to the jury.
You want it in the bag?
So if we could pass the jury the gloves while that's being tagged, then we can pass that. Yeah, give me the gloves because I'm going to put it on this. Okay.
cold outside down there. That's why you bring the weather here.
All right, Corporal Bianchi, is this tray essentially in the same condition as it was when Mr. Reinking passed it to you?
It appears to be, yes.
And when he passed it to you, had he attempted to do anything to cover up this artwork?
To my knowledge, I can't remember.
He hadn't torn it into little pieces?
Objection deleting.
It's the same.
What, if anything, did he cover it with when he handed it to you?
I can't remember.
Okay. All right. All right, for the record, can you describe the artwork?
It looks like an individual, and there's a truck there. An individual appears to have some sort of item or weapon, maybe, that is firing some sort of projectiles at individuals inside a building that's labeled as Waffle House. And there are captions above some of the individuals in the establishment. There's a moon and there's a couple stars up in the sky.
All right. Do you see the stick figure that is lying prone on the ground?
Yes.
Do you see the dark area right under that figure?
Yes.
Okay. How are the eyes drawn on that figure?
They have X's.
And how are the eyes drawn on the other person who apparently has these dashes going through the top part of the neck or the bottom of the
They have
head?
X's also.
What do you see in this picture, or what is in this picture, that would be indicative of self-defense?
Objection, Your Honor. It's totally irrelevant. It's total speculation. Can't answer that question.
It's the same.
What in this picture is drawn that would indicate God commanding the person with this gun?
Same objection. This man is a sheriff's deputy that is in the jail.
It's
He
the
has
same.
no
I
expertise.
think it's argument, but
Okay. When you received this item from Mr. Reinking, what did you do?
The first thing I did was I notified my supervisor at the time that I'd received a strange item and that he should be aware of it.
All right. And once you alerted your supervisor, what did you actually do with this container?
I can't remember exactly. I think I just set it to the side though.
Okay. When you were interacting with Mr. Reinking on April 1st of 2019, what was his demeanor?
Very calm. He's always been very respectful, followed institutional rules.
Okay. So not just on April 1st, but during the entire time that you interacted with him
Yes,
while he was in your custody, is that correct?
correct.
Okay. Did you feel like, or strike that, did he ever get a write-up for disobeying rules?
To my knowledge, no.
Is that normal for folks in that section?
Your Honor, objection.
it's the same.
All right. What did he ever do in his interactions with you that would indicate that he didn't understand rules or was not able to obey rules?
Again, objection, Your Honor. It's totally outside it's not rebuttal.
It's the same. I mean, I think at this point in time, we're talking April
2019, roughly 1 year
of,
later.
yeah, and that's not immediately after the event.
We just get to the next one. Okay, that's all for this witness, Judge.
Ross?
No, thank you. No excuse. No question.
I didn't say that.
Judge, our next witness is Corporal Saggs. Okay. You want me to play off of the foundation, just go straight to on April 2nd? Would you get that? Okay. And then, okay.
Would raise your right hand if you sworn, please.
You solemnly swear to affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God.
We'll make a little bit of stand, let's step along.
Would you please state your name and spell your name for the record?
Teyler Saggs, Teyler Saggs.
Where do you work, sir?
For the Davidson County Sheriff's Office.
And what do you do now? What is your current assignment?
Currently work second shift on the Transportation and Court Services Division
Where did you work in April of 2019?
at the MCC.
And while you were working at the NCC, how often in a given month would you see or interact with Travis Reinking?
At least once a week.
All right. On April 2nd, 2019, were you interacting with Travis Reinking?
Yes, sir.
And did you interact with him as far as giving him his dinner on a styrofoam tray and then retrieving that tray about a half an hour later?
That is correct.
All right. Let me pass to you an item. If you can take that out of the wrapping. Can you identify this item?
Yes, sir.
What is it?
The styrofoam tray
Who did you receive that item from?
from Mr. Reinking.
Is it in the same condition that it was in when you received it from Mr. Reinking?
It appears so, yes, sir.
Judge, I'd like to make that the next exhibit. And then I would like to publish that to the jury in the same manner as we passed the previous exhibit. Is this styrofoam container in essentially the same condition that it was in when Mr. Reinking handed it to you?
It appears so, yes, sir.
When you saw this, what did you do?
I notified my supervisor, and I believe we took a picture of it before we turned it over to my supervisor.
Why did you do that?
Kind of out of character.
And had you been told, well, strike that. That's fine. That's all the questions, sir.
Deputy, just a few questions. The top right of that, what does that appear to be?
Appears to be a flying saucer.
Right, spaceship, right? Some kind of flying saucer.
Yes, sir.
And there appears to be aliens inside of it, right?
Possibly.
All right, how many of them?
Appears to be 3.
That's all.
Anything else?
State rest
One moment, Your Honor.
No, Your Honor.
All right, members, jury, excuse me, that concludes the evidentiary portion of the trial. The next phase of the trial will be closing arguments. I can, without even having spoken to the attorneys, I don't anticipate that the hour and a half we have left would complete the closing arguments. And certainly if it did, it might, they may feel rushed to accomplish that. I do not like breaking up the closing arguments. I like it to go smoothly from one to the next so you can kind of absorb it all together. And I prefer that closing arguments and jury charge be done back to back as well. Rather than get into closing arguments where they're kind of giving you their opinions and you sleeping on it and start letting those opinions settle in, I'd much prefer that it's easier for you to remain open-minded if we just stop right now. And tomorrow, we will do closing arguments and charge. You're going to get this case tomorrow to begin your deliberations. The bottom line, please remember, the trial of the case is not over with. You can't go back to the hotel tonight and be discussing anything about it or whatever, what's transpired in this courtroom. Keep your thoughts to yourself, remain open-minded. Since you're under the protection of my staff, I'm not concerned about the news media or anybody communicating with you about the case. So just go back to the hotel room and relax. And I understand there's a birthday on this jury. Happy birthday. And if I could sing, I would sing you happy birthday. But you do not want to hear that. So I hope you have I'm sorry your birthday is being spent away from family, friends, and all that type of stuff. So I guess you'll just have to celebrate it another day. But my staff will do the best they can to help you enjoy it this evening, okay? All right. With that, y'all can go ahead and leave. And might be best if we just all go back. All right, court's adjourned. If I can just see the attorney back here.
All of them are.
Yeah, I'll just have all of them. We'll talk.